Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the history of video games. Got a good episode for you guys today, as always. My name is Wes, and I'm here with Ben. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing really well, Wes. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a Friday, getting those weekend feels going on. It's
Oh, yeah.
it's a good time.
I agree, very much so. And it's a time to play some video games.
Oh,
So,
of course.
what have you been playing, Wes? And what are you going to be playing this weekend? I got to ask.
Oh man, oof, geez, wasn't prepared for these questions. So, what I wanted to talk about today is I've actually been delving a little bit more into a type of gameplay I don't really do much, which is like grinding, like skill based games.
hmm
Sort of like when you're talking about climbing the ranks in StarCraft or something like that. Although for me, it's more like there's a couple games that I play where like you got to play them a lot to be any good at them. The first of
Right.
which being League. Got back into League of Legends a little bit.
Nice.
There's tons of different game modes in that. So I was playing one called Teamfight Tactics, which was that auto chess one I talked about previously.
hmm
Grinded that for a bit and then got fairly tired of it because I was playing it constantly. But then went back to one of the main game modes, ARAMs, which is an acronym that I would get into explaining, but then it gets more confusing with all the confusing League of Legends lingo. But I've been having a lot of fun just like learning the champions, which are the characters in the game, how to play, learning the items and the situational, how to use each item, which previously I kind of just played stuff for fun and never worried about the competitive aspect of it. But maybe it's because stuck at home during the quarantine time and I really want to just drill down and be good at these games. But yeah,
hmm
so I've been checking that out. That's fun. But recently I've just been pouring tons of hours into Escape from Tarkov, which I talked about, I think it was probably like 10, 15 episodes ago by now. But it's just a realistic, hardcore shooter, kind of like survival type game with extreme amounts of gun modification that sometimes I played a game for an hour and I realized I was just in the menu, like messing around with putting like a foregrip in a different spot on a gun. And I'm not even that into guns. I mean, of course, I like shooter games, but it's just really fun and satisfying for some reason when you build like this crazy, awesome looking SKS or something that has whatever on it. So,
hmm
but that's a game where I just really needed to figure out like you have to get used to how each gun fires and like the distance that it's capable at, and also different ammo types and how they penetrate different armor. It's insane. And it's a game that has been equal parts frustrating. If I had a lighter table, I might flip it. But then it's like you win a raid, which is like what they're sort of like missions. The main gameplay is called raids in Tarkov.
hmm
You win a raid and you get like a million rubles in a gear that you can sell, and you're like, oh man, feeling so good. So it's definitely a real high and low type game, the type of game that previously would make me just like I don't really rage, but I kind of before I get to the point with being angry with the game, I'm just like, nope, not gonna play that anymore.
Right.
But this one I got a little angry with, but then I was like, you know what? No, learning experience. Let's try to get good at this. And it's been brutal but fun. I actually feel like I'm getting better at it, and I know like how to do some tactical maneuvers, use different sights and silencers in the game, and all that kind of crazy stuff.
Nice.
So yeah, it's been fun getting into that more like grinding skill in a game, which is an interesting thing that I never really did much before.
Yeah. That's really cool. I'm
Yeah.
glad you're sticking with it, you know?
Yes.
Do the up and down.
Yes. As long as it doesn't make me too angry, then I'll just be like, okay, it's a game. Get out of there, which is also a perfectly healthy decision. But
Right.
why don't you talk to us about what you've been playing recently?
Oh yeah. Well, actually, before I get into that, I want to tell you, Wes. I was watching Polt stream,
Oh yeah,
StarCraft
yeah.
2 player, one of my favorites, the other day, and he was actually streaming Teamfight Tactics, right?
Oh yeah.
And his stream title was number one NA doing a Smurf account so I can hold positions 1 and 2. I was like, what are you doing, dude? This guy is just so good.
It's the ultimate
But,
troll move, man.
I know. I was like, what, number one's not good enough? You gotta take 1 and 2. But yeah, I was watching that a little bit. So maybe I'll get into that. We'll see.
Yeah, it's a lot up front, but definitely a really fun game.
Yeah. I've been actually playing a bunch of different stuff But I think the one I want to talk about today is Pokemon again.
Oh, of course.
And the reason is, well, there's two reasons. Number one is I kind of had an epiphany with my ROM hack, and I was like, I want to change everything, which I'll talk to you about in a second. And then the other thing was I was playing through my Nuzlocke run, and I had an all kill wipe happen.
Oh no.
I know, and I was like, oh my god, I feel like I lost everything. It was against Koga. I don't know why. I think I had, what was it? Maybe Hypno was like super effective against his Pokemon, which are all poison.
Right.
Or I forget, maybe it wasn't Hypno, but whoever it was out there, and then like the first coughing did self destruct and killed him, and I was like, oh my gosh. And that started a big downhill battle of not being able to really damage his Pokemon for some reason. So now, if I continue playing, which I don't think I will with this run, I had to play with like, I'd still have like a decent backup, but it would be like Ghastly and Pidgey and all these like lower tier guys. I don't know. But yeah, that wasn't the reason for the like completely redoing of my hack, but I thought it was a funny thing that happened at
Yeah.
like the same time. The other thing, actually, you know what? I caught a Squirtle on one route because I put them in the grass in a couple places now, the starters, so you could catch all of them. And I was so excited about it because I was looking for a water Pokemon for my party, and I even was like, I had a text laid out to send you as to be like, oh my god, I found Squirtle, you
Oh
know,
no.
on the Nuzlocke run, and then I caught him at like level 25 or something, and he's supposed to evolve into Wartortle at like 16, I don't know. And I was like, maybe I should wait and level him up once and make sure that he actually continues to evolve into Wartortle or whatever, which is what he's supposed to do, but I kind of wanted to just double check before I sent a text to you. And I was leveling him up, and the first person I like tried to train him with, I forget what happened. It was like a critical hit or something, one shot, and he died. And I was like, oh my god.
Oh no.
But that's what you get when you play this Nuzlocke
I
run.
guess
But
so, yeah. Jeez.
it was a very interesting evening, full
Yeah.
of ups and
And
downs.
talk about the highs and lows of gaming, yeah.
But yeah, so I was thinking about my ROM hack a lot, and I didn't like that the team of Pokemon I had, they weren't changing, right? I found a pretty good team, and then that was the good team, and I was gonna go basically to the end with them. And I thought about that a lot, and I remember even talking to you about this, where I was like, you know, one thing that's great about Pokemon is about everybody is viable in some way or another. And I remember saying that to you, and I was just thinking, well, if everybody's viable, there's not really any reason you would ever need to change one out for another because they're all good, you know?
Right.
So, like, if you have a Pokemon that does Hydro Pump, you don't need another Pokemon that does Hydro Pump, you know? So, there's no real reason to switch anything out, ever. And I was thinking about that a lot, and I was like, well, I kind of want you to be able to use many Pokemon on your run. And I was thinking a lot about it, and I was thinking about a Pokemon like Rattata, for instance, and Raticate. And I was like, that's a Pokemon you get early in the game. You use it for a couple gyms, you evolve it to its final form, you maybe unlock its best moves, but then you kind of like, it's like, okay, Raticate's done its purpose, and I'm throwing it out. And I thought about that, and I was like, okay, maybe I need to actually make my Pokemon into different tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and the number 1s just cannot compete with number 2s, and 2s cannot compete with number 3s. And that means that some of the Pokemon you can't really, or you don't want to take to the end because they're not going to be good. But if I space them out right, you'll still use them in that section of the game. And then when the time comes to switch, you'll switch and you'll still feel like you use them for a couple of hours. But, you know, there's a reason to not just hold on the whole way through, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's interesting because it's sort of like a more incentive to rotate your team out. I mean, in the original games, maybe not Gen 1, but in the current generation games, you know, there's like situational stuff, but I still kept my starter all the way through because it was a super strong fire type.
Right.
Yeah, so I like that idea of sort of this guy's going to be the best up until available until this point, and it's like, okay, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Here's somebody else I can rotate in. Yeah.
Exactly. So I started to completely redo my hack with that in mind. So things I'm doing, for instance, I'm putting like a Vulpix and a Growlithe early in the game, but their best move, fire move, is like going to be Ember, you know? And so if you need a fire Pokemon in the very, very beginning, well, you have one that knows Ember, and that's good enough in the beginning, but they don't know Flamethrower. You have to get a tier 2 Pokemon to get that. So that's kind of what I'm dealing with, what I'm thinking about doing. I haven't implemented a lot of it yet, but I've gone through every Pokemon. Just I think last night I finished going through everyone, writing out their move lists and kind of making notes about what I think might change. And I'll actually go in and I'll change them later. But I'm doing stuff like that. I like a Pokemon that was really on my radar was like Gyarados, because Magikarp you catch with an old rod right at the beginning of the game, and then Gyarados is like ridiculously good. And I'm like, well, if you have a Gyarados, is there need for any other water Pokemon in the whole rest of the game? you know? So I was looking at stuff like that, and I think I decided I'm not going to give Gyarados Hydro Pump. I'm going to give it like Surf or something else, which is going to be good. But if you want a Hydro Pump, you got to get like, I don't know, even a Starmie, Staryu type thing or something. Some water Pokemon that's all they can do.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Just to make it so that there's a reason to switch out. So I'm basically making changes to just about everybody, honestly. So it's been a massive undertaking, and it's taken me several hours to go through, to be honest. But I think once I'm done with it, it'll feel way better to play, at least for my style.
What you want to get out of the game, right?
Right. Because I want to use a lot of Pokemon, and I don't want to just be like, well, Hypno's really good, and I got him really early, so I guess that's that,
Right.
It's like, okay, well, maybe I should move Hypno a bit later in the game, so there's other Pokemon that can fill that slot for a little bit longer, something like that. I don't know. Everybody has like a couple things I want to change, but it's been a much more massive undertaking than the first time through. And it's weird because I'm debuffing people as much as I'm buffing people, and I'm moving where their spawn rates are and doing a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, it's hard, but I think it'll be nice. But it was just like a weird thing for me because it was kind of the opposite of why I thought I liked Pokemon. Because I was like, oh yeah, I can take Eradicate to the end, and that I could, but if you do that, then you're not playing with any other Pokemon. So it's like, well, what do I really want out of this,
Right.
And I think I decided, okay, you use Raticate for a little bit, and then you're done with it. And I don't feel like I lost time playing as Raticate. Like, I played my Raticate portion of the game. No, I'm cool with that. So, yeah, that's what I've been doing. That's one of the things.
That's cool. I mean, it sounds like a fun project, and I mean, maybe it's a good thing that it's a lot of work, but you already have a vision for it, so it's a fun thing to kind of like drill away at and do bits and pieces and slowly work towards.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the hard part was just kind of getting a good kind of overview of all the Pokemon available and knowing, how strong they are compared to where they spawn, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
That was the hard part. And now that I have all that data, and I kind of did some shortcuts and stuff, so I wrote notes in and I made it so it'll be easy to now change things and move things around. So I think it'll be really, really good. And it's almost, I'm basically at the point now I'm ready to start changing stuff. So it's not going to take that much longer, but it'll be really cool, I think, when it's done. So maybe I'll send it your way to do whatever, Wes. But
Yeah,
maybe I'll put it out there on the website or something. But it'll be cool, yeah. So that's what I've been doing.
Awesome.
Let's get into the special topic, though, Wes. We got a kind of a weirder one this week.
A little bit of a hodgepodge. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of like little facts and stuff that I find during research that I'm like, well, there's not really a whole like special topic worth of info here, but maybe it's worth mentioning and worth talking about, even just for a second. So we kind of threw in maybe like 3 little topics here today that we'll just go through real fast. Actually, before we even start on the first one, Wes, one thing I realized, and I was watching a bunch of videos, and I was like, wait a minute, are we saying this word wrong?
Oh.
It's another one of those. Yeah. Colco, right?
Yes.
With the Telstar. I found out it's actually pronounced Coleco. Coleco.
Okay.
I don't like that, if I'm being honest, but I'm pretty positive that's how you pronounce it now. I looked it up, and I was like, there's a commercial where they're like, buy this thing, buy Coleco. I was like, wow.
Well, there you have it. That's the official word right there.
Yeah. So it's Coleco. That's one thing. But yeah, moving on to like real things. The first thing I thought originally I was gonna make this a full topic, which was the video game crash of '77. But I already kind of talked about some of this stuff when I did a couple episodes back. I talked about like things I was annoyed by and during my research.
Right.
So I don't know if there's that much more to say, but I thought it'd be good to address it maybe one more time. The video game crash of '77 is happening right now, and as we're in '77, and essentially it's targeting like first generation Pong consoles. Essentially, there was just way too many of them made. I think the AY3 8500 line, I think that was what really kicked it off. But for whatever reason that it happened, I think it was the Christmas of '76 and then even Christmas of '77 where people made so many of these systems to sell and then nobody bought any. And they just sat on the shelves. And then all the companies at the same time were like, oh my God, what if I like cut the price in half? It just to like get them off the shelves. And then nobody still bought them.
Right.
And they're like, okay, what if I just sell them for 2 cents? Is anyone going to buy? And that obviously caused a crash in the console market, and tons of companies went out of business. I mean, almost all of the first generation console companies went out of business, other than Atari and Magnavox, and even companies like the Fairchild Company was seriously affected by it. And they don't make any games in '79. I don't know if that's a direct like cause from the video game crash of '77, which this crash does bleed into '78 quite a bit, but so I'm not sure exactly how much it influenced Fairchild, but I know the RCA Studio 2 is going to come to an end eventually, and this was a reason for that as well. So basically, any first generation console company, other than maybe like a small handful, is going to go out of business. And that's a lot of companies because a lot of people tried. So there's a massive crash happening, and it affected the sales of everything because once you could get a Pong console for 5 cents, and then you see the 2600 later that comes out this year for $500, you're like, it's probably really good, but come on.
Right.
So it affected everything. But luckily, I don't think it really affected arcade games that much, or it didn't affect computers at all, I don't think. And the biggest companies were able to weather it out, especially because they came out with their own kind of killer apps in '77 and '78. So I don't think it like hit everybody equally, but certainly the people that are not on the edge of technology are going to be basically destroyed. So yeah, that's just one thing I want to quickly mention, just to make sure everybody knows that it's happening. And by the way, I know this firsthand because I started doing research for '78 already, and there's about 1/4 of the amount of first generation consoles in '78 compared to '77. It's been reduced 75%, which is crazy.
It's nuts compared to the volume that we had. Just like you said, that many people selling them for low cost, it is not super sustainable.
Yeah. So I've seen firsthand, the drop, and I think '79 is going to be 1/4 of '78's number. So it's going to drop off dramatically. So yeah, that's the first thing we want to talk about. Wes, why don't you talk about the second little mini topic here for today?
Yeah, sure. So next thing we wanted to cover is a computer that will come out in Japan in '77 called the Sword M200 Smart Home Computer. SORD, not SWORD. And we couldn't really find too much information on this other than that it is the first desktop computer released in Japan. It looks like it was announced around September, but that date's also a little bit shaky. And it was kind of like the Japanese counterpart at the time to what would be the big three computers of 1977. It used a Zilog Z80 processor, which we've heard of before, and we know that's still a pretty competitive processor, and a CRT display, which I just think is funny because I know that's like the quintessential old school display.
Mm-hmm.
It used basic language, and interestingly enough, the company Sword that made this would eventually become a subsidiary of Toshiba, and they would be the Toshiba Personal Computer System Corporation. Just like a interesting thing of how all these groups either get bought up when they have their own interesting technology that one of the larger companies wants, but it's still crazy to me how we're in mid 70s and it's like, oh yeah, this person's connected to Apple and this company led to Atari or like whatever it is,
Yeah,
stuff like that. So this computer, not too much more information on it other than that, but would eventually be sort of part of the legacy of Toshiba.
yeah. And I think one of the kind of, you know, one of the things that's going to happen because of this new computer in Japan is we're going to start seeing some Japanese computer games, and that's always going to be really cool. So watch out for that. And then the last thing we wanted to quickly mention here, I thought I was going to do a whole episode on personal computers, but we already have been kind of like in personal computers, and I don't know if we really address it that well. It's kind of like a hard thing to talk about because we know microcomputers pretty well at this point, and we've talked about microcomputers. They're basically anything that's smaller than a mainframe, and really are designed for like one or two people to use essentially, and not a big mainframe. But it's kind of weird. Like the difference between personal computer and microcomputer is kind of like, I would say, almost up to interpretation. They basically almost mean the same thing. I think microcomputer is really anything that's small enough that's, a smaller size than a mainframe, but it's probably meant for businesses, especially in the 70s and even 80s, where one person would be on them part of the time, but it wasn't their computer. It was like a company's computer or a university computer, but it was small, so it was a microcomputer. Whereas personal computers really do mean for one person, like it's their computer. So personal computers are microcomputers, but they're also, meant for an average Joe to have his own and not be bought by like a university or a company. So we've already seen some personal computers come out. In fact, the Apple One was a personal computer. The first true personal computer was the Altair 8800, which we've talked about previously as well. And the Commodore PET is a personal computer. So we already are kind of in personal computer land, but I think maybe we've been referring to them as microcomputers. But I just want everybody out there to know that that's basically the same thing. Although I think microcomputer has more of a business kind of connotation to it than personal computer does. And it's not to say that the PET or any of these other personal computers weren't also like used in an office, but maybe just how they're marketed is differently and how they're priced is slightly differently. So
Yeah. And I think if I'm not mistaken, part of it's also just the sort of like usability of a personal computer. Like a lot of them, although not all of them, were like keyboard, floppy, and monitor sort of there for you, or at least a lot of the newer desktop ones that we're getting to in 77. So
right.
there's a lot of fuzzy definitions and lines of like whether something's all three of those or whatever. But I think a lot of it is the usability of it as well for like an average user.
Right. Yeah, personal computer is really like the average person's computer, I think. And where microcomputer is just any small computer. So they're the same and they're different at the same time. But I think as time goes on and the podcast goes on, we're going to start saying personal computer a lot more than we're going to say microcomputer, which is actually how it happened in real life because microcomputer isn't really used as a word today. It's all PC. So, yeah. So those are three little things that we thought we'd mention. And I think we're going to take a little bit of a music break and then head over into the timeline. Hello and welcome back from that amazing music that we just heard. Whoever wrote it, it's got to be the best.
True
Even though
maestro.
The real winner is the arranger, not the composer. The arranger really did all the work. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, we're going to start off here with a couple honorable mentions. We have, to start off, the March-April edition of the People's Computer Company newsletter. They have a bunch of games in this one, which People's Computer Company, sometimes there's no games, sometimes there's a lot of games. In this case, we got a lot. It actually starts off talking about Pilot, which I don't know how much we're really going to get into Pilot, but I thought I should mention it. It's another programming language that becomes somewhat popular in certain groups, I guess I'll say, of especially, computer newsletter readers, I guess. But it's another programming language like BASIC, and there's a bunch of games that are basically showcased of how you program these games in Pilot that we've already seen before. So I didn't want to go through all those games again, but Pilot, I'm not sure how much we're going to really see it. It doesn't seem like it catches on near as much as BASIC does, going forward, but there was definitely a certain time, and we might see a couple other games based in Pilot right around this time in history. So yeah, I thought we should at least mention it. There is a one kind of unique game that uses it in this issue. It's essentially an education reading and writing game where you basically, it kind of asks you questions, or like there's a narrative story, like I don't know, Little Red Riding Hood, and basically you type out every now and then a sentence or two in the story, and then it continues with the story a little bit. So you're kind of reading half of the story, and then you're kind of writing it out as you go as well. And I'm not sure if you can just write anything and it'll just continue, or if it wants something particular and you have to maybe from a book, and if you don't have the book, you can't do it. But either way, it's a educational reading and writing game based in Pilot language. So kind of interesting. Moving on from that, we have another game here, Reverse. We've seen this game before, but this listing is for computers with graphic displays in particular, and it has a small animation showing the numbers switching places. So, for instance, how you play the game is, imagine you have the number 3214. That's 3, 2, 1, and then 4. And you want to switch digits 1 and 3. So you want to make 1, 2, 3, 4, essentially. So the 3 and the 1, you actually will see it. There's an animation that shows the 3 going above the numbers and back to its place, and the 1 going below the numbers and to its new place. Kind of like this circle animation thing. So you can see the digit switch in real time. So I thought that was interesting, but the game is not. So we're going to leave it there.
And then next up, we have something called Mine 8 by Doug Felt. Don't have too much information of this because we didn't have a full listing in this issue. Don't really know if it was playable at this point, but it looks like it's almost like a minefield sort of crossing type game. Not too sure what else it would entail other than that, though. And then next up, we have the Yes No game, which is a basic number guessing game.
Oh, yeah. And then the last one we have in this issue is called Zot, and hopefully that's you guys know what that is, because actually in the last episode I reviewed Zot, which came out in the People's Computer Company game book in '77, but they actually published it in this issue as well, and it's the exact same thing. So if you want to know our rating for that, check out last week's episode.
And then next up, we'll be getting into some arcade cabinets that we have. The first one is Crash Course by Sega, which came out in March '77. This was basically just a clone of Blockade by Gremlin. And then after that, we have Flying Fortress by Taito. Always love seeing Taito get something new out there.
Yep.
And then this, though, is a clone of Flying Fortress by Electra. So there's only one video online that we could find showing this game, but it was poor enough quality that we couldn't really see much about what was actually going on in this game. Although it sounds cool.
Yeah, it was kind of it looked like a horizontal, kind of like you're in a plane and there's tanks or stuff below, and you would hit a button to drop a bomb on them, but there was also planes coming at you from the side that you had to shoot down at the same time. That's what it looked like, but like you said, you really can't see what's going on that well, so I didn't feel they could be very different from that.
Right.
But that's what I was getting from it. But I didn't feel very confident in that. But that's going to move us on here to the first one that I rated this week. It's another arcade game, this time by Exidy, which hopefully you guys know means it's probably going to be really good. I think the last one we covered by them was Death Race, which was an amazing game. Wait, that was right, right? Death Race. Why is that sound
Attack,
right?
actually, by Exidy was the most recent one that we rated by them.
Okay. So the last one we did by them was Attack, but they're also known for like Death Race and Destruction Derby. So this is a company to watch out for. And this game in particular kind of has a bit of an interesting background to it because it was actually delayed several times in their production and given extra time to like really try to make good and make like a big hit. Like this is the one they kind of put a lot of resources into. And was it a big hit? Maybe. It's a very interesting one. So Car Polo here by Exidy came out in March of 77. It's essentially or literally Rocket League. So you've got 4 cars and a ball in the middle of the screen. It's 2v2 and there's 2 nets on either side and you're trying to use your car to bounce the ball into the giant soccer net. So it's literally Rocket League.
Man, yeah.
I know there's a lot of Rocket League fans out there, even listening to the podcast right now. So this is where it all comes back to, guys, which is pretty cool. It is like a top-down view. It's not, behind the camera view that we see in Rocket League. It's top-down, but essentially the gameplay is the same. And there's a lot of like really cool and innovative things going on here. And then there's also a lot of things that aren't done the best, or maybe they're just like the precision I'm looking for just wasn't available. But let's like just get into the ratings because it'll be easiest to talk about. I think just talking about the ratings. Let's talk about graphics first. I gave the graphics 3 out of 10. It's very solid, and the reason it's solid is a couple reasons. Number one, it's all in color. It's in true color, and that's great. And they even do a really good job where the background is just like a really nice green color. All 4 cars are separate colors, but like it's 2 teams, right? So it's 2v2, and the red side is like a red and a pink car, so they kind of look red together. Like that's the red team. And then the other team is like blue and like teal. So it's kind of like,
nice.
even though they're 4 different colors, I still feel like I know who my teammate is, which is really cool. So they did that really well. And then the goals themselves, there's kind of like a yellow area, which is the inside of the net. And then it's got an outline of the team's color. So you know which goal is the team's color goal. Although it's kind of weird, they have it where the goal that you want to hit into is your color. So normally it would be like the goal that you're defending is your color.
Right.
So that's a little opposite, but it doesn't really bother me that much.
Right. Compared to what we have had where there's no indication of what team is which really other than which side it's on.
Right. So I thought that was pretty good. Everything looks really good. You've got, a score in the top. You've got a timer. Basically the game plays until time runs out. So it's not whoever like gets to like 10 first or something. Instead, it's just whoever has the most by the end. And all that looks really good. And then there's another weird thing about it. Once you score a goal, the cars like kind of respawn to their positions. And then I guess a referee comes out and grabs the ball and puts it to the middle and then runs off screen. But it's real weird, Wes. I'm telling you, it's like it looks like a man, but all of the limbs are like semicircles, so it looks like he's wearing flippers or I don't know, it's really unnerving how it looks. It looks like kind of like a skeleton, but instead of bones it's like a ghost form, so it's like a ghostly skeleton. I've heard people describe it as like the Loch Ness monster or like the creature of the Black Lagoon or something like that.
Oh, yeah. It's like Swamp Thing coming out there.
Yeah, I know. It looks real weird. The animation on it is really bad, but in a way that's like, again, it just looks unnerving. I don't know what to say. It's all white. There's no like clothes or anything. And there's not really a face either. It's more like a ghost face or something. I don't know. It creeps you out. Doesn't look like a referee at all. I don't know why the limbs are curved the way they are, but they're definitely curved, and the animation looks like he's I don't know, I want to say it looks like how I would imagine like a squid would move like on land. I don't know. It's really weird. But again, it's really weird, but I like that it's there, and it definitely adds a little bit of character and life to an otherwise, pretty like it's just a green background, right? There's nothing really to look at on the background, but you can always expect that guy to come in after every goal and move the ball. So it's a interesting addition, but overall, I just gave it 3 out of 10. Nothing looked like incredibly amazing, but I thought they did a really good job with the colors and the design of the background. As simple as it was really easy to read and know what I'm supposed to be doing. So that was really cool. So I gave it a 3 out of 10. For gameplay, I gave it 2.5 out of 10. This is a 1, 2, 3, or 4 player game because of the 4 cars, but they do have AI that fills in, and that's what I was using when I was reading this game and playing the game. And what's weird is that the AI doesn't really know what they're doing. I think the AI is probably programmed to run towards the ball. So all the AI does try to kind of huddle and attack the ball, but they're not really like trying to push it in any particular direction. Like they'll just as quickly push it in their own goal as your goal, it feels like. And luckily, since the ball starts in the middle and the AI are coming from like their respective sides on the field when it starts, usually the first couple hits are kind of in the right direction because that's kind of where the car is coming from. But they don't really know what they're doing. Like if I let it run forever, I don't know if any goal would be made. So it's not exactly great AI, but I like that there's an AI option at least. That's nice to me. And obviously it's good if you can play with real people as well. But that's one problem the game has. The other problem is the actual ball physics. It's not good. The ball will constantly be pushed through other cars, which is really weird. And I don't know what the reasoning behind this is, but sometimes if you like hit the ball and then you turn, you actually like grab the ball and it'll turn with your car and then it'll kind of shoot. But sometimes it doesn't do that. Sometimes you hit the ball and it just shoots right away. So I have no idea why it does one or the other, but sometimes the ball will actually like be held onto by a car, sometimes for a while. So that's really weird. The like bumping into other car physics is really kind of jank as well because like I mentioned with the ball going through cars, you can kind of get stuck inside of a car as well. So that's really kind of weird. Like the physics in general just don't make a whole lot of sense. Sometimes you hit the ball and it goes crazy far, and sometimes you hit the ball and it barely moves. And there doesn't seem to be a good reason behind it. Like it doesn't feel like it's making sense how it's working.
Right.
And the last thing I want to talk about as far as gameplay goes is the actual driving mechanics. Now this is a little bit of a hard one to rate because I'm playing it on an emulator and on a keyboard. I'm sure it was not designed on a keyboard. I'm sure it was designed, in fact, I know it was designed with a steering wheel in mind. So take this with a grain of salt. But the car drives really strangely in a way that's different from like a Grand Track 10 or some other kind of top-down driving game. The diagonal driving doesn't really seem to work. It's more like it'll kind of move diagonally and then the car will shift into a diagonal position and then kind of go, but the shifting loses all speed when it happens. So there's no like drifting or anything, and it feels a lot more almost like you're driving a tank where you kind of go forward and then when you turn, you lose all speed and then you go forward again.
Right.
So the cars all feel a little bit like tanks. That could be an emulator thing. I don't want to harsh on it too badly, but the driving didn't feel right. So that's another kind of knock on the gameplay a little bit. But the core of the gameplay is very solid. Your cars, you're basically playing soccer. You have unique physics. It doesn't feel like Pong at all. I love that. So it's a very unique experience, and the AI, despite it being kind of jank and weird, definitely adds to the game experience, and not having it would make the game significantly worse, I think. So I still really enjoy my time playing. It's a very unique game. It's one that, for whatever reason, I think it's because of Rocket League, I'm just like, wow, this feels like, I don't know, it just has that extra, +1 for nostalgia or charm or whatever that some games have that make me like it. and I enjoyed playing it when I did, but it wasn't like my favorite type of gameplay because of all these like small issues that could have been addressed, but they didn't have either the talent to address them or the time. I'm not sure because I do think there's a lot of new things happening here, like hitting a ball with a car. Nobody's programmed physics for that before.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
the first time, so I don't think we've even ever played a game where a character hit another character and had to move it in a kind of physics sense at all. So I'm sure there's lots of advances to physics here, but like with any kind of advancement, the first attempt at it is not the best. So there's issues. It's weird though, especially the cars hitting themselves. You would think from Exidy that that wouldn't be an issue, considering that they've done destruction derby and stuff where cars are supposed to be hitting each other. But I don't know. Maybe the combination of them not being like destroyed when you hit them, like
Right.
maybe it was a problem all along. We just never really it never really came up. For sound, unfortunately, the emulator does not have sound, and I could not find any videos of this in the original cabinet. So I have to NA sound. I hate doing that, and I'm sure there is sound, and it's probably decent sound. I think Exidy has always had pretty good sound in their games, but unfortunately, I couldn't find it, so I just had to NA it. And then relevance, I gave it 8 out of 10. I mean, come on. Cars hitting soccer balls into soccer nets, that's something I've seen even before Rocket League. I know that was a thing. So I don't know if it's based off of a real life sport. I think it could be, but I've definitely have seen this concept before, and if it does all go back to this game, that's incredible. But even just the strides they made to physics and having the color look as good as it does, even though it is simple, it has color, it has some character, and it has a weird, Loch Ness monster type creature that does animation. I think it's got a fair amount going on, and I felt comfortable giving it a high relevance rating, even if it just influences the game that influences Rocket League, if that makes sense. So
Right.
that gives me an overall score. I didn't do the strict math again, but I gave it a 2.75 out of 10. It's a pretty solid one. I was very happy with it. There was just a couple small things that kind of took away from the experience for me a little bit. But maybe the next implementation won't have that, and it's going to feel amazing. But it's got to feel amazing as well as look and sound good. So, yeah, that's Car Polo, Wes. What do you think?
It's very cool. Yeah. It's kind of, I mean, you definitely see that concept around, but it's amazing to see it all the way back in 77 and think, there's probably a line of games that led up to Rocket League, or who knows if it was different inspiration that just happened to be something that already existed. But you don't see like a ton of these, or at least in my memory, I don't have a ton of these. So it's interesting that it's still, you can kind of see the breadcrumbs all the way back in 1977 with this. And it sounds like it was a
Right.
pretty fun one too.
Yeah, it was very unique, and anything that's different from what we normally play is good.
Right. Yeah.
So I was happy to take a look at it. But yeah, why don't we move on to the next one? We got another honorable mention here.
Yep. And I think it's our last arcade cabinet as well. This one is Video Card World by United Games Incorporated. Came out in 77. This was just 2 card games. It played blackjack and 5-card stud poker. Not too much information on the flyer, but it looks like the cards and playing areas were both fairly well detailed. And then next up, moving over to the computer games side of things again, we get to talk about D&D, which I got to take a look at. And this is not D and D, although it is basically D and D. But this is a game by David Lawrence, came out sometime in 77, that takes a lot of inspiration from games like Petit 5 and Game of Dungeons.
Oh,
Yes, indeed. It's good to see it back again. It's highly contested that it takes inspiration from these games. We have 2 fairly detailed sources of people who have played these games and done some research of them, so for most of this I'm going to be deferring to their judgment, but the creator himself has made claims that people often don't believe about this game, saying that he came up with it completely on his own, saying that he possibly came up with it before Dungeons and Dragons was even created, and some kind of interesting stuff. So I am going to be erring on the side of what I read in the two reviews of this game that I was looking at. Just understand that it's a little contested. So I don't want to throw shade on this guy because he made a really cool game, which let's just get into talking about that because that's what we're here for anyway.
Yeah. What were the sources? Maybe we should shout them out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So one of them is, we referenced this before, but it's the CRPG Addict blog. I
Yes.
think that, yeah, CRPG Addict at blog or .blogspot. And he has just gone through tons of these early RPG games and played through them. Some of them he's done a full playthrough and beat and done really great reviews on. And then the other one is Data Driven Gamer, who before that CRPG Addict couldn't play this game. Data Driven Gamer, who does the same kind of thing, figured out a way to get this game running and was able to actually play through it. And then both of them played it and reviewed it.
And I think wasn't CRPG Addict the guy that did the Moria map? Is that right? Am I thinking of that right?
Yes, yeah, I think I did pull the Moria map from him, and then I think actually Data Driven Gamer did a map for this game as well to
Oh,
help people
cool.
try and get through it, if I'm remembering that correctly. But a long way of
So these are legends.
yes, yeah. Check them both out, especially if you're interested in this type of game and the history of this type of game, because they have very well documented looks at them and also their own personal experiences playing through all of these in a row. So definitely both worth taking a look at. One thing I wanted to mention, though, right off the bat about this is that D&D does have multiple updates through its lifespan, and it would later lead to a game called Telengard, which we'll be talking about a lot later, but just to give you a little heads up that this is coming, and also this is, even if it may not seem like it right at the start, it's a pretty important game because it leads to some other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the basic gameplay for this, kind of what you'd expect from something that's taking inspiration from Petit 5. At the start, you roll a character with random stats. One of the big differences here is that you can actually choose your class instead of being an all-rounder like in previous games. In this, you could either be a fighter, a mage, or a cleric, and that dictated, I think, which spells you could use, or at least how well you could use spells. Whereas before, your character could just do sort of everything in previous iterations of this type of game. There are 3 different dungeons that you could explore, all of which could contain an orb, which was like the object of the quest. You have to find the orb, get it, and then leave the dungeon to actually win the game.
Sounds like Petit 5.
Yes, yeah, and I think the orb was actually specifically something from Game of Dungeons as well, like not even the same name and everything. So you'll see a lot of those as we go through it. You can travel on the screen in the 4 different directions, north, south, east, and west, and you move one section at a time, then it shows the new section on your screen, very Bet 5-ish. If you die, you have to make a new character, so there's permadeath. The monster types all seem pretty much exactly the same as Petit 5. You have like kobolds, trolls, dragons, all that kind of stuff, and they have different strengths and weaknesses. You get experience from killing the monsters, and then you gather gold and stuff like that, which converts to experience once you leave. So same kind of stuff that we've seen in these types of games.
Nice.
But there are also, in this one, an addition that we haven't seen in some previous ones. Tons of equipment items. I know CRPG Addict said specifically that some of the previous games went to like Magic Sword +5, and this guy has like Magic Sword +22. So I don't know if it was just like that much more scaling difficulty or what, but lots of different items. Some of them were kind of self-explanatory, like Ring of Regeneration, but then other ones had sort of mysterious names, and it seemed you had to sort of figure out what the equipment did for you. When you leveled up, just like in games of this genre, you get more hit points, you can cast more, and also you can cast higher level spells. And another interesting addition this one makes is that there's a lot of like interactable or sort of like events that happens. Like you'll walk into a room with a throne, and if you sit on it, it has like 5 different effects that can happen based on certain conditions. There's books you can read that can increase your skill points and stuff like that. So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on that makes it pretty cool, and definitely, well, a lot of people have compared this directly to the 2 other games I mentioned. There's definitely a lot of innovations going on in this as well. So for my ratings for this, let's start off with graphics. I gave it a 0.5 out of 10.
Oh.
D&D is all ASCII characters, which, as you know from some of the previous episodes, I can really love. But in this case, each object is only represented by one character. So it's not really like
Oh
you're getting
no.
any, yeah, yeah, you're not getting any complex designs, nothing like Targ, where, I mean, I gush about Targ. Maybe it doesn't deserve it, but I love the explosions and the ships and everything in that.
Mm-hmm.
But the walls are just eyes. The character is an X, and all of the monsters are hashtags, as far as I can tell, or number signs. Sorry, you can tell I live in 2020 when I'm calling it a hashtag.
So, like, is there text that says like dragon or something? Then how do you know?
Yes, yeah, you got right
Okay.
ahead of me for my next point. So, for the general monsters, when you encounter them, it'll say there's a decent bit of text information on the screen, which is really good. And I don't have any problem with that. It's just the like graphical representation that
Mm-hmm.
really made me lower my score for this because it does a great job of telling you like what's happening in the game, what equipment you have, what stats you have, your current HP, and all that. A lot easier to use than Petit 5, where you had to sort of toggle to different screens to be able to view that. So it'll tell you when you walk up to a monster what it is, and there are some special monsters that just show up as like abbreviations. Like the dragon isn't a number sign, it's just DGN on the screen,
Hmm.
which, I mean, it works. It gets the message across, and you can kind of suspend your disbelief. But for me, I would have liked the little drawings that we had in Petit 5 of just like these awesome looking, weird monsters and all that. Even though I think there was only
Right.
like 5 different monster type drawings, it was still pretty cool. So that's it for graphics. I mean, everything's displayed well, but the graphical like illustration elements of it didn't really impress me much.
I'm guessing there's no mini map.
No, no. So there's just, it just shows you the one section that you're in. There isn't a mini map.
Mm-hmm.
I think I want to say you could like, when you got the floppy, you could like access a file that had the map in it or
Hmm.
something like that. But I don't know how that would even view on one of those old school computers.
Right.
And it sounded like you had to like print it out and kind of fill in stuff as you went as well. So
I mean, it could be cool, I guess. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah. So I mean, and for people who like pen and paper kind of dungeon crawling, it seems like it could be interesting. So I do like that there was that feature, but for me, watching people play this and getting an idea of it, I didn't really get the benefit of the maps so
Yeah.
much. For sound, I gave it a 0 out of 10. No sound, easy peasy. For gameplay, I gave it a 2.5 out of 10. I feel like it definitely has some really great improvements over previous D&D games that we've played, but it still feels very similar. I like all the events and the items you can pick up, and this also has the addition of Constitution and Charisma stats, which, of course, like traditional tabletop D&D has, but some of the, I think all of the computer ones that we've seen so far haven't had those in them.
Mm-hmm.
But the gameplay still feels pretty simple. I mean, same basic thing. You're kind of grinding monsters, getting experience, getting gold, getting equipment, leaving the dungeon, going back in, which I loved in Petit 5, but now in 77, I don't know. I just feel like I'm wanting a little bit more.
Yeah. How's the combat work? Is it like auto like Petit 5 was? Kinda.
Once again, you are being a clairvoyant, Ben, because that's literally my next sentence in my notes.
Oh.
But
I'll
no,
stop talking.
no, you're good. I love that it's engaging you and that you're asking the same questions and I'm answering the questions that people are wondering.
Yeah.
So yeah, the combat in this is one change that I really did like to the gameplay, and part of the reason that I bumped it up to a 2.5. It's sort of turn based. It's not instantly resolved,
Nice.
which is a lot better than I think it was Petit 5 and maybe Game of Dungeons as well, where you would fight something and it would just say like you hit it 3 times, you were hit 5 times, you died, and you're like
Yeah. Exactly.
just like information overload. And this, you also have the option to change your tactic every turn. So it's like you took 3 damage, you dealt 5 damage. Do you fight again? Do you evade or do you cast? So you don't
Hmm.
just have one option that kind of determines a whole battle. So it really gives you a
Nice.
lot more of the like typical turn-based dungeon crawling strategy that we know today, where it just feels a lot better than the combat
Yeah.
instantly resolving.
Yeah.
So I definitely, that was one of the big things, as well as the new items and the events that I really did like about this gameplay and really differentiated it from the previous one that we played. For relevance, then, I gave it a 7 out of 10. I know that it's a little weird because D&D takes a lot of inspiration from previous games, but David Lawrence was able to distribute this and market it much more widely. He was actually like selling it on floppy disks, I'm pretty sure, at the time.
Hmm.
And it wasn't confined to the Plato system either, because he wrote it in BASIC and was able to put it on other machines, go to different universities. I think he was still around that area, but it was more than just like one college using a Plato system that could play one game.
Right. Having it be in basic was like so huge, I think, for that.
Right. It just makes the distribution so easy, which is kind of interesting because that's also probably part of why it didn't have the same graphical capabilities for all the stuff that
Yeah.
he was doing. It had to look so simple. So what gives it a negative in the graphics for me is really part of what makes it so relevant and why it's such an important game to cover in this.
Hmm.
Because I'm sure this influenced tons of games because Petit 5 may seem like, oh my god, Petit 5 did it all. But really, it was in a pretty isolated environment at the time. So it's more like Petit 5 influenced this and other games, which then spread more widely and influenced tons of things. So David Lawrence did a really good job of just spreading this to a ton of people, and it would lead to another important D&D game in the future, as I mentioned, Telengard, which is also a big one that's going to continue to help push the genre forward. So I feel like it was really relevant. And overall, same as you, Ben, I love the not actually adding up any of my things and dividing them. I just guesstimated and gave it a 1.5 out of 10. I think D&D made some great innovations. It's definitely important to video game history, but the simple graphics are really what hurt the game for me.
Hmm.
But that being said, the gameplay flow is like a ton better than what we've previously seen. It's just I kind of expect a little bit more out of computer games in 77, so it didn't really live up to the hype I had when I was reading it, but it still is definitely worth taking a look at and really fun.
Nice. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, it was a good one. It was fun to take a look at.
Let's move to one that wasn't fun.
Oh boy, just what I was looking for.
Oh yeah. Let's move on to the next one I rated. I don't know why I even have to rate this, but the next one I rated was called Dataman, and it's kind of the next in the Little Professor line of handhelds.
So you know it's going to be good.
Basically, we have a calculator on our hands. To be fair, I think they really tried to make this interesting, and there is quite a bit inside of it. But when the graphics are just numbers, essentially, it's like, what can you really do? you know? So, yeah, this is a calculator by Texas Instruments. It came out sometime in 77, and it's called Dataman. It was sold alongside The Little Professor, which came out last year and actually got a lot more attention and praise than this does. I think it's because this does not have a weird man's face on it.
That was really the selling point.
I know. It's weird. This one's kind of, it has this weird thematic lore background to it where it's supposed to be like some sort of space age thing. So the whole rule book is, it's like all spacified and it's weird. The box cover art is real strange. It basically looks like one of those, I guess it's a 70s take on what an astronaut suit would look like, and it looks like a scuba suit, but it's all silver, if that makes sense. With like one of those weird hoses coming off the top of the head.
Right. It's like we all live in a yellow submarine kind of thing in space.
Yeah.
And
So that's what's on the cover art, which is really weird. But the actual, handheld itself is just a silver looking calculator essentially, with no weird faces or anything. It does look a little like, I think they tried to make it look somewhat futuristic. So it's not just like it's like utilitarian or something. Like there's some artistic work to make it look like it's futuristic, but it's essentially it's a great calculator. Weirdly enough, actually, this might help us with our other handhelds, Wes. But I found out it uses a vacuum fluorescent display, VFD, which is I guess different from LED. So I don't know if that's what most of our handhelds at this time are using, but maybe that's why we're having trouble like talking about them sometimes.
right.
But yeah, so vacuum fluorescent display, and it looks basically like how a calculator looks, So maybe that's not what the other handhelds we've covered are, but maybe it'll come up again. I'm not sure, but it essentially looks like a calculator display, but it does have a couple extra things. So let's talk about it. Let's start with graphics because that should be pretty easy. I just gave graphics a 1 out of 10. I mean, it's a very small section of the calculator that's actually the display. I gave it 1 out of 10 and not lower because there is actually like some animation type things happening. So if you get a number right, it has a little animation that it kind of looks like a bullet going across and then it kind of explodes or something at the end. So They have a couple animations like that. There's one where I think maybe when you get it wrong, it kind of looks like the numbers explode or something like that, but into little pieces. So there's like a couple small animations that they didn't have to put in there, but they did. And, I appreciate the extra length and effort that they went, even though there's really nothing else to it.
Right.
I don't think there's any real figures or sprites or anything like that. It's essentially numbers and then some interesting animations when you're done looking at those numbers. So, yeah, I gave it 1 out of 10 for that. For gameplay, this is the most interesting part of Dataman. There's a lot of different gameplay types in this calculator, and some of them are similar, and then some of them are like, that's kind of an interesting addition. So I wrote them down here because there's quite a few. The first games that they have are just, your classic, you put in some numbers, and then you have to also write in the answer, and it tells you if the answer is right. Some classic math games. There's a memory bank in the calculator, so there's somewhere you go in, you save a couple equations that you want to save, and then you can give them to a friend and have them solve those equations. Again, not the most interesting thing, but it's kind of interesting that they have a memory bank and stuff. But here's where it gets interesting. Here's some of the more interesting games. There's one that's a number guessing game. So just like in our basic number guessing games that we've seen for years now, the calculator has a number picked out, and then I think you basically guess, and then I think it says if that guess was lower or higher, just like most of the other kind of number guessing games that we see. So it's interesting that that's in a calculator instead of being on a computer. I think it's probably better to be in a calculator than a computer, but it's also not a good game. So, but I think it's a cool like crossover thing. There's also one which I thought was cool that it was essentially, I think, a set of maybe 10 questions or something, but they were timed, and it was a hot potato type game where you would have to answer a question, you would give it to somebody else, they would have to answer the next question, give it to somebody else, and if you didn't get it in time, that was the hot potato, and it went off, and you lost. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah. I think I'd rather play like hot potato, but
right, yeah.
I guess it's cool. And then they had some game boards that came in the instruction manual that you could play with the calculator. And these were essentially like the calculator would ask you a question, what's 5 plus 5? If you get it right, your piece goes to the next square on the game board. And I think there were 2 or 3 of these game boards that just looked slightly differently, but they're all basically the same. So you move your character up, and if you get it wrong, you give it to the other person, and whoever gets to the end first wins. I mean, it's essentially the same type of thing, but I guess the addition of a game board was, again, something they didn't need to have, but they had it, and, I think it's better than just solving a bunch of math equations, so that's a plus. And then the last game, this is the most interesting one, I think. It has, I think, 2 versions of NIM on this calculator, and that is weird to me. There's one, I think, that you play against the computer, and then there's also one where it just has like a number like 80, and then each player it's a 2-player game, and each player basically picks a number between 1 to 9, and it subtracts that from 80, and you don't want to be the one that ends up subtracting the last number to 0.
Right.
So it's a NIM game on a calculator, and I was like, hey, I've not seen that. I've not played a NIM game that you can put in your pocket yet, so I guess that's good. Is it a fun game? No. And having it be on a calculator doesn't really make it more fun, but it's much preferable to playing it on a computer, I guess. So there's actually quite a few interesting games here. Again, I don't think any of them were that fun, to be honest with you, but there's more variety than I originally thought when I took a look at it. So I was like, oh, wow. They actually tried. So I give them props for that. I guess it's an educational game at heart, not meant to be the most fun, but they tried. They tried to make it fun, and I give them props. So for gameplay, I gave it a 1.5 out of 10. It's not great, but they really tried. I wanted to give them some points there. For sound, there's no sound, which is really strange to me because I'm pretty sure Little Professor had sound, did it? I don't remember, but I feel like it could have had sound. We've played handhelds that had sound.
Yeah.
and it doesn't need to be like anything crazy, but just like a little beep or something would have helped. So just 0 out of 10 for sound. And then relevance, I don't know. I gave it 4 out of 10. Maybe it's like it's the first time we've seen Nim on a handheld. It's the first time we've seen like a hot potato type game using handhelds. So there's some first here, which is kind of interesting. But Little Professor just seems so much more popular than this game. And honestly, there's not that much on it out there. So for whatever reason, I think it's literally because of that dude's face on Little Professor that it took off. But not having that face just made this game not very popular. So I couldn't go that high with it, but I gave it a couple points there because it did do some first and some unique things. So yeah, and that's gonna leave me with I gave it maybe a little bit higher than I should have, but I gave it a 1.75 out of 10 for total.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I don't know. What can I say about it, Wes? It's not good, but it's unique and interesting. So I think from a historical perspective, it has an interesting place in history. As a person who's not 6 years old, I'm not really interested in it. But if you're just learning math for the first time, maybe it could be really helpful and really fun way to learn math, So I don't want to knock it too hard.
Yeah. No, it does sound pretty cool. And it's weird to me that, I mean, like you said, it's got to just be the design or maybe the marketing as well of the Little Professor, because this seems like it really had a lot more options and sort of aids to make education a little bit more fun. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of the
It's
Dataman.
got to be the face. I guarantee you it's the face. It's such a weird looking face on Little Professor that you just have to be like, wait, what is that? And this one
Yeah.
almost looks like a normal calculator, to be honest.
Ah, what were they thinking?
Yeah, I don't know. But and I don't think it was really well advertised as far as the games it had too. Like I had to dig into the rulebook to find them. None of the videos I watched on this mentioned the games at all because I don't think people really knew that they were there.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe just poor marketing and stuff, but kind of an interesting one, I guess. But I'll be happy to give you the next calculator, Wes. But this next one's not that though. This next one, different handheld. Why don't you talk about these next two handhelds by Milton Bradley, which is a company we're going to see more and more often again. So the start of a new chapter in handhelds as well.
Yeah, so the next one that we're going to take a look at is Logic 5, also called Comp 4, I think.
Yeah.
And as Ben mentioned, these were by Milton Bradley. And this was basically just a handheld version of Mastermind. But, it is a handheld version of a game. We're starting to get into that handheld market a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And then moving on from that, we've got one more computer game here before Wes closes it out. This one's called Encounter by Objective Design, which came out in March of '77 again. This was published on a magazine called Interface Age. And I thought about covering this magazine more in depth, but they really don't make anything of note in the whole year of '77 other than this game, I thought. And in this game, again called Encounter, it's a grid-based game similar to chess and how it's played. But what's interesting about it is that actions happen in real time without taking turns. So if you're faster, you can just make more moves. And I thought that was kind of interesting. It seems to be a game that was played. I'm not sure if it was played with somebody, like locally, like in the same room as you on the same keyboard, or if you played it. I think you could play it against other computers, either wired together or maybe through the intranet. Is that what it's called at the time?
ARPANET, or it might have been
ARPANET?
getting to ARPANET was.
I'm not sure.
I don't actually know. One of those like internet precursors.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how it was played, but it seems like an interesting game, especially if it's a thought-based game like chess in real time. I thought it was pretty interesting. Unfortunately, because it's kind of like a game, one of these games we don't have videos of or anything, I wouldn't be able to get it running myself. So we just have to mention it. But yeah, it was kind of an interesting one. The most interesting of this whole Interface Age magazine of '77. So if you want to know more about it, check it out. It's on archive.org. So go for it.
And then to close things out for today, we got another big one. We have a new console by Atari. Holy cow.
Oh, yeah.
And this one is called the Video Pinball Console. It was a model number C380. It had several different versions, so I just want to mention a few of the new chips that this used right off the bat. Some of the versions used a C011500. Other ones had a variation of it, the C011512. I think there was also another variation that was the 512-05. So it's kind of confusing, but the one that I'm rating here had 7 different games on it. It came in 2 different cases. You could either get a wood grain one or a white plastic looking one. The console itself had a dial on the front, and basically to control the paddles for the Pong type games. Had some menu buttons on the face, and then it also had a ball serve button for on the face of it to start the games. But on the sides of it, it actually had a button on either side because some of the games that this came with were pinball type games. So you would actually put your hands on the side of this little console and use it like pinball flippers, which is pretty sweet.
Hmm.
It was a wired console, and the console itself was the controller, so you would plug it in and sit with it. It looks like it was a one-player console, and as far as I could tell, all the games were one player as well. It did have sounds that came from the speakers, but they were kind of just the typical Pong sounds, as far as I could tell. There's one for a paddle hit, one for a ball bounce, and then one for either hitting one of the blocks that's on the screen or getting a point. It wasn't bad, but it was pretty simple. And then one of the most amazing features of this is that it displayed, I think, it was hard to tell, 4 different colors. It definitely displayed red, yellow, and green, and then black and white. But it also looked like there was almost a like bluish hued white as well. It looked different than the normal whites, but I wasn't able to distinguish too well. I don't know if you have any input on that either, Ben, but
I do not know, but I'll take your word for it, Wes.
yeah, but definitely the red, yellow, and green. I think maybe a blue outlined or bluish white. That could have just been the displays of the people who I was watching play this through the games on this console. And so the way that I reviewed this one, it's got 7 different games and another version of this that I'll be talking about. So I kind of just want to go through each of the games, tell you what they're all about, tell you some of the pros and cons about them, and then at the end I'll just give you a real quick rundown of what my ratings are to sort of wrap it all up. Let's go through the lineup that we have. The first 2 games that we have on here are Pinball 1 and Pinball 2. And these were pretty sweet. It had like a white border almost all the way around the screen. And then at the very bottom of the screen, it had 2 bluish flippers that would like, just as you would imagine with regular pinball flippers, although these go horizontal and straight down instead of being sort of at an angle. It looked a little difficult to play, but it was really pretty fun. You had a ball that bounced up and down the screen, and it had gravity, like as if it was on a pinball table, or at least simulated gravity. There were squares all over the screen that were different colors, that were bumpers. There was also a large rectangle in the center of the screen for one of the layouts that was like a spinner almost. And one of the really cool ways that they used color in this system was when you hit it into a bumper, it would change color. I think they started out green. If you hit them once, they turned yellow. And then if you hit them a third time, they turned red. And then if you hit them again, they disappeared. So like actual bumpers in like electronic pinball game kind of things.
Nice.
Yeah. And another great way that they used these different color effects was with the spinner, the rectangle I was talking about. It turns from yellow to green wherever the ball actually hits. And then the whole spinner itself is yellow. Whenever the ball hits a section of the spinner, it turns green, but then also following where the ball just was, it turns red. So there's like this whole kaleidoscope of color to really give you the feel that the ball is like spinning around in a spinner on an actual pinball machine. It's a really interesting way of doing it, considering it was just like a square on a screen with like 3 or 4 different colors. So it really helps make up for it and kind of make it feel a little bit better. So the different colors really help it make up for the fact that it is just a square for the spinner and sort of give it the feel of motion and help you realize that it's in a spinner. And I do want to say it is a little weird how the ball just kind of like shot into the spinner and then it didn't look like it made sense where it went flying out or how long it stayed in the spinner. But I mean, that's kind of how pinball machines actually work in real life too, I feel like. So I think it was a pretty good representation. Pinball 1 and 2, the 2 different versions were just different sort of layouts of it. The bumpers and the spinners and some of the other things that you could hit for points were in different sections. And basically, with these, you would just get as many points as you can within the time limit, or actually within the amount of balls that you had to play. I don't think there was a time limit for this one. The next two games on this console were Paddle Pinball 1 and 2, which were using the same layouts as Pinball 1 and 2, but instead of having flippers at the bottom, you just have a Pong paddle that goes across the bottom. So it's interesting because it's the same layouts, the same sort of like type of game. You're still just kind of hitting a ball into these different things, but it plays a fair bit differently because you can actually seek out the ball and make sure you catch it instead of waiting for it to hit the flippers. Even though it is kind of just like changing one element to make two more games and to make 4 games total, it didn't feel as cheap as some of the other ones where it's like, hey, here's one paddle, it's squash, here's 2 paddles, now it's handball, or like something
Right.
like that. It felt a little bit different, or at least unique enough that it looked like it was still fun.
Mm-hmm.
But then getting on to some of the crazy different things where Atari's like, hey, you guys have been making Pong clones, here we are doing Pong clones that are totally different. They had a game called Rebound on this, which was sort of like basketball almost, except you had a paddle on the bottom of the screen, and you had a ball that always falls down. It had like what seemed to me like heavier gravity than in the pinball games. And you have to bounce the ball twice on your paddle or more before you can score in these hoops that are up at the top of the screen, which are basically like a series of rectangles stacked on top of each other. They're color coded from, I think it's red, yellow, and then green. The highest one gets the most points, but you can also get it in all 3 in a row if you hit it at the right angle. And you had to, after you bounced it on your paddle, hit a hit button to actually bounce it up in the right angle to get it into those different hoops. And so it's this really interesting like Pong version that we've never seen before. It also looks incredibly frustrating and hard to play. I do want to say, as cool as it is, but it's just neat that they came up with this totally different idea of like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like we've seen basketball and Pong games before, but it's just soccer with the hole moved up on top of the screen. Like this is actually feels a little bit more like basketball. And also, whenever you get in a point in one of the hoops, they change to a different side of the screen just to switch it up a bit.
I like that one a lot because I think I remember reading it's like little mini bounces, right? And then the big bounce is like your shot once you hit the button and it goes off your paddle. But the mini bounces, they actually call it dribbling. And I was like, it does kind of look like dribbling for some weird reason.
Yeah, it's sort of like upside down basketball because the ball is bouncing off your paddle instead of it bouncing off your hand. But yeah, and I think the alternate version of this that I was talking about is actually called basketball or maybe rebound. I'm not sure if there was different titles for it.
Yeah, I think they called maybe European ones rebound and the NA ones basketball.
Basketball, yeah. Say. But it did look like on at least one of these consoles, there was a version of this that just had 1 ring at a time instead of 3 hoops in a row that you had to get a score in.
Mm-hmm.
And then next up, because that was only 5 games and this is a 7-game console, there's Breakthrough, which is like Breakout, except there's only 2 colors of bricks. And then where there would be the 3rd color row, it goes like yellow, green, and then red at the top. Where there would be the green row in the center, there's just an empty space where the ball can bounce in between.
Nice.
And yeah, it's this weird twist on it. And the other twist that they add is that the red bricks at the very top can only be broken if they're hit straight from your paddle, but not if they bounce off yellow bricks. So you can't just like make one hole in the yellow and then have it bounce up and down and get all the red bricks out.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Which is honestly part of what I feel like makes Breakout the regular game so satisfying when you get those like just for like 50 different bricks. But still, it's like this interesting slight difference in rules that I feel like makes for a pretty cool game. I definitely like the original Breakout better, but I think it's, again, same as Rebound. It's like a different enough clone of one of their own games that's like, okay, this is a different sort of experience. And then lastly, the big guns. They had Breakout on this, which is the first time that we have seen Breakout on a home console. It honestly looks like just as good as it does on the arcade cabinet. It's kind of crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some graphical elements that it doesn't live up to, but you have the 3 colors. You got the paddle, you can see the ball clearly. You have the borders, you have the score. It's
You've
wonderful.
got the colors? Because remember, the original one had an overlay, didn't even have color. So that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's nuts. I mean, when you think about this in the context of a home console in '77, they're really making some big strides with these consoles. And I don't know if I can describe it super well, but if you remember me talking about Breakout before, there's just something about Breakout. I just love that type
Yeah.
of game. It's this version, and same with the arcade version, look like it is really hard and frustrating, but it's a super popular game, so obviously it was still fun for people at the time. So I just love that it's on this console and a console in general. So that's sort of me gushing about the 7 different games and the one variant game that are on this console. Going through my ratings for this, I gave it a 3.5 for graphics. It's weird because everything is still just squares and rectangles, and that part of it doesn't really look great. But they had 3, maybe 4, still iffy on that because I don't really know, colors, and they use them in such inventive ways, like with the pinball games, with when stuff lights up when the ball's in the back of it, that even though it sucks that all the stuff is still squares and rectangles, they really make up for it, in my opinion, with their use of color. The sound, like I mentioned, it's Pong sounds. It's good, nothing too special, so I just gave it a 1 out of 10 for that. The gameplay, though, I gave a 4 out of 10 for all of these overall.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of them look like I would probably never play them and I'd be super frustrated by rebound, but still, it's just a ton of variation and a lot of amazing games.
And no regular Pong. That's nice.
Right, yeah. I mean, they're totally marketing this around the idea of like, hey, it's video pinball, which is going out of what everyone else is doing. There's definitely some games in here that are just like, hey, look, it's different pinball, but I still think they make different enough choices and different enough rules for how you play the game that they're all super fun to play. And also, it's Breakout on a home console, which is super exciting. So that definitely skewed my ratings quite a bit for that. And also skewed my relevance rating when I gave it a 8 out of 10. Atari, I don't know. I try not to harp on them too much because it's like, yeah, everyone loves Atari. You know, they're the giants in this whole history timeline. But man, they did a good job with this. It's simple, but it just feels like it does what it's trying to do really well.
Yeah. I feel like this is a special one for me because this is like a perfect example of a first generation console that is not just a Pong clone. You know what I mean? Like there's truly unique stuff happening here, and I feel like some of the games are arcade level quality, if not higher. You know, especially Breakout.
Right.
So, and we've seen some of these other ones like Pinball. It's kind of like Pin Pong by Atari, and Pin Paddle is kind of like Super Flipper. So like these are kind of I feel like they're like arcade quality games, but they're on a console. Like that's crazy.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought up the fact that it's a Generation 1 console, too, because
Yeah.
I'm talking about 7 games, which, of course, use a lot of the same assets, but they're still all pretty unique, and there's no cartridges. I mean, this was all
Mm-hmm.
in this little tiny handheld console, which was also a controller. So it's
Right.
really cool and shows that you didn't have to make Pong clones. You could have done something else.
Right.
But so for my overall rating for it, I gave it a 3.5 out of 10. I don't know. It's a little tough to say if that's a bit high, but I think just what it does with the graphics and the gameplay, it really deserves it. And also just how relevant it is for all the games, primarily Breakout, that is bringing to console for the first time.
Yeah.
If one complaint about it, it's really just the sound. I mean, give me a little musical intro and outro for some of the games, but other than that, it's super great console and it looks awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe that last year Breakout came out on an arcade machine wasn't even good enough to be have true color, and now it's like we're on a console with true color. I mean, the advance is just like crazy lately.
Yeah,
So yeah, I thought it was a cool one. So video
yeah.
pinball people, check it out.
Definitely watch some videos on it. It's a cool one.
Yeah, and also I forgot to mention the Sears version is called Pinball Breakaway, so you might find some stuff under that name as well. But that's going to do it for us today. We talked about video pinball again. We talked about Car Polo, which is a cool Rocket League type game. D&D by Daniel Lawrence, and Dataman, which is a game that you should probably forget.
Yeah, so make sure to check us out on Twitter. Send us an email if you have any questions. Check out our website for more information or to look back at some of the previous stuff that we've covered.
And we'll catch you next time. Have a good one, everyone.
See you in the next episode.
Do da.